Hey there, welcome to Lesson 2 of the Road Back course. Last time we learned vivace in C, so I want to begin by answering some of your questions. If you're here just to learn today's lesson, skip ahead to the time marked on your screen. By the way, thank you for all your comments and questions. Your questions are probably wondered by many others, so we all keep learning this way. Now, some of your questions will be answered in this lesson, and others will be answered in a shorter format, like on Instagram and YouTube Shorts. Cornelius Gurlitt lived from 1820 to 1901. Fun fact, his wife was 45 years younger. So he technically was born as the Romantic period in music was beginning. This era brought us composers like Chopin, Brahms, and Schumann, and many others that we all know. You'll notice, though, that this piece, Vivace, doesn't sound anything like any of those Romantic composers. Change takes time, and it's not like music suddenly changed from 1820 on. Gurlitt's music sometimes feels more classical, and sometimes it feels more romantic. So in general, he represents a transitional period between those two eras. Now, I'm talking about this because someone wondered if the notes that weren't under a slur should be more detached because of the time period. And I would say no. Typically, composers from the classical and Romantic period would use staccato markings if they wanted something detached. Whereas in the Baroque period, with composers like Bach, hardly any articulation markings were used at all, and we just rely on what we know as common interpretation or stylistic interpretation for deciding things like that. It can be difficult to interpret what slurs are supposed to mean from era to era and composer to composer. Sometimes they indicate phrases, sometimes they indicate legato playing, and other times they're marking motifs or gestures, which I believe is the case for this piece. As far as articulation goes, the right hand should be mostly legato, and in the left hand, it's open to interpretation. I prefer to slur in two-note groups, except in line 3, where I like to detach them. And finally, let's talk about the tempo. Vivace means lively, which is often interpreted as fast. On metronomes, there are usually tempo ranges that correspond with each Italian tempo marking, like allegro, andante. But honestly, vivace can represent a wide range of tempos. Rather than focusing on the exact speed, focus on nailing the mood, lively. But I know tempos are really helpful when you're learning a piece, so I'd say to aim for at least 120 beats per minute, which is fast enough, especially if you're playing with a really clean and crisp touch. And I wouldn't go much faster than 180. So I'd love to hear how this piece went for you. And if 3 weeks was a good amount of time to learn it, I included 3 tracks at different tempos of me playing this you can download below. When I was taking lessons, my teacher had 2 pianos, and it was always so helpful when we would play together. If you think that could also be helpful for you, go ahead and download those tracks and play along with me. When you do that, you might find some rhythmic or note errors, or find some musical interpretation ideas by playing along. Okay, on to our new stuff. I want to make sure we all have a base foundation for properly using the damper pedal. It's such an amazing tool that can make your playing sound much more musical and professional, but it's also highly misused and therefore can have the opposite effect and make your playing sound a little amateur. The piano has dampers that sit on the strings and they dampen any vibration or sound. When we press a key, the damper comes off the string as the hammer strikes it. For as long as you have that key pressed down, the damper remains off the string and allows it to keep vibrating and making sound. But as soon as you release the key, the damper lays on the string again, muting the sound. Now, when we press the damper pedal down, all the dampers come off the string and they stay that way until the pedal comes back up. So we can play a key, and even when we let go of that key, the sound will continue to ring as long as the damper pedal is pressed down. Unless we're specifically going for a muddy effect, we need to use a special technique when we use the damper pedal called legato pedaling. This ensures that all of the notes captured in one damper pedal sound good together. Oftentimes, this means they're all part of the same chord. And when the chord changes, we need to lift the pedal in a special way so that it doesn't capture clashing, conflicting chords within the same pedal sound. This takes a bit of coordination at first, but it becomes second nature after some practice, I promise. We're gonna go through some exercises that introduces technique, even if you're thinking, I already know how to pedal. I want you to watch this. A lot of times we think we're doing it right, but it's actually kind of sloppy, and there are common errors we're gonna address. Here's our first exercise. The notes are very simple. Play a C major pentascale, up and down, and pedal on every single note. First listen to it when I keep the pedal down the entire time. Now compare that to when I pedal on every note. When we pedal, only the toes and ball of the foot are physically on the pedal. The heel stays on the ground. To lift the pedal, let the toes come up like you're tapping your foot. For this exercise, hold each note for 4 counts. On beat 1, the pedal comes up while the hand plays the first note. At the very beginning, the pedal is already up, so just play the note. Then on beat 2, the pedal comes down while the finger stays down. And beats 3 and 4 both continue to hold. Now here's where it gets fun. We're about to move to the D, right? So on beat 1, play the D, and at the exact same time the pedal lifts. It doesn't lift before the D, it doesn't lift after the D, but right with the D. Think of an alligator's mouth, chomping down. The top is your hand, the bottom is your foot. So your hand comes down as the pedal comes up, and they meet exactly in the middle as they chomp. So that's beat 1. Hand down, pedal up. Beat 2, remember the pedal comes down while the hand continues to hold. Beats 3 and 4, you just hold both. And then moving on to E, beat 1, pedal comes up and you play E. Beat 2, pedal comes down. Hand stays down, hold for 3 and 4. And we continue very slowly with this same pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, let me show you some common mistakes so you can avoid them. First mistake, the pedal and the hand lift at the same time together. As you can hear, when they lift at the same time, there's a big gap in the sound and it's no longer legato. So the pedal needs to stay down until you play the next note. This is what connects them. The second common mistake is lifting the pedal too late. It creates a really muddy sound where the 2 dissonant notes sound together at the same time. The fix is making sure that the pedal lifts exactly when the key plays. Another common mistake I see is not lifting the pedal up all the way. There are different levels to the pedal, and lifting the pedal up only halfway, well, that's actually a really advanced technique that you don't want to do right now accidentally. So you might be lifting and playing at the correct times, but if you're not lifting the pedal up all the way, the sound won't fully clear. The final common mistake I see is lifting the entire foot off the ground like you're stomping on a bug. part of the foot that needs to come up is the ball and the toes. The heel stays on the ground. When you're feeling confident with that first exercise in the right hand, switch to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And then hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. After that, there's one more exercise I'd like for you to work on. It's the same concept, just one level up. Instead of playing single notes, you'll play full chords from a C chord up to a G chord, then back down again. Instead of holding for 4 counts each, you're going to only hold for 2. Just like before, on beat 1, you'll play the chord and lift the pedal. And on beat 2, the pedal will come back down while the hand continues to hold the chord. But now, you don't have beats 3 and 4 to hang out, relax, and think of what's coming next. Right after beat 2, you've got beat 1, where you play the next chord and lift the pedal at the same time. Beat 2, pedal comes down, so my hand is going to move to the next chord right after beat 2. You could choreograph it by lifting and moving your hand on the and of 2. There's one more way to level up these exercises, and that's putting the pedal down faster after you lift on beat 1. Currently, we're putting the pedal back down in beat 2, right? To get to the next level, put it down on the and of 1. 1 and 2 and 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 1 and 2. At this point, getting to this level is optional. Putting the pedal back down in beat 2 is completely fine. I have PDF scores for both of these exercises. Visually, seeing the pedal lift marks might help you. And just in case you're not familiar with pedal markings, most of the time you'll see it like this. A bracket with a bump, which means to lift. Your piece this week is just a little composition I wrote to get you started using the damper pedal. It has no name, sorry. If you have a name for it, please let me know. You'll use the same pedal technique as in the exercises. Whenever you see that bump in the bracket, that means your pedal lifts at the same time you play the notes above. Then on the next beat, your pedal comes down while your hands hold. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, the pedal back down on beat 2 or the level up way on the and of 1. Notice my fingering and where I change hand positions, and these are all marked in the score as well. So, how to begin practicing this piece? The notes aren't extremely difficult, but you will want to have a really good handle on them before you try adding in the pedal, especially since the coordination is hard at first. So first, learn the notes and rhythm, then practice pedal and left hand only, making sure that you're always very specific about when the pedal lifts and comes down. Then the right hand and pedal alone. And when you go to put hands together with the pedal, only attempt really small chunks at a time. Otherwise, it might be easy to get overwhelmed and start getting sloppy with when you pedal. I like to work backwards, so I'll start with the last 4 bars, practice that, and then go 4 bars before that. For your assignment, start with exercise 1 and pedal, and the piece, no pedal. Once exercise 1 feels good, add exercise 2. So continue with both exercises with the pedal and the piece, still no pedal. Once you have both exercises and the notes and rhythms to the piece, then add the pedal to the piece. For extra things to work on, you can try adding pedal to some of your current or old pieces. Not all pieces, though, need or should have pedal, so if you're wondering whether you should add a pedal part to a piece, you can ask me in the comments below, or if you want to learn something new, I have 2 PDFs that you can download with pedal markings for you to practice as a side project. So that's gonna do it for us today. Learning how to properly use the damper pedal can feel frustrating for a time, but it is so worth the effort, and it becomes something that you don't even think about eventually. Really, I truly mean that. Remember to comment your questions and requests below so we can keep learning together, and I'll see you next time.